The ink on my pen was barely dry from signing the lease on my new apartment when my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. I was standing in the middle of boxes I hadn't unpacked yet, still wearing the jacket I'd driven 3 hours in, feeling for the first time in years like I could actually breathe. Fresh start. New city. My name on a door that nobody else had a key to. I glanced at the screen. It was my notary. Patricia Hollins. The woman who had handled every legal document in my family for 11 years. She didn't text. She never texted. She called. Formally. During business hours. And always opened with this. Is Patricia Hollins calling on behalf of... The message she sent was 4 words. Do not sign anything. I stared at it. Read it again. Then a second buzz. Call me. Now. Please. That please was the part that scared me. Patricia Hollins had never said please in her life. Before I could dial. Another notification dropped from my brother. Marcus. His name lit up the screen with the cheerful little photo I'd assigned him years ago, the 2 of us at a baseball game. Arms around each other. Laughing at something I couldn't remember anymore. Hey. You still coming Saturday? Dad's lawyer needs both signatures before the 30th. It's just paperwork. Lily. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. The contrast between those 2 messages sat in my chest like a stone I'd swallowed. I walked to the window. The street below was ordinary and quiet. A woman walking a dog. A kid on a bike. Normal things happening in a normal world that had nothing to do with the fact that my hands had started shaking. I called Patricia. She picked up before the first ring finished. Lily. Her voice was stripped of every professional veneer I had ever heard from her. Ralph. Urgent. I need you to listen to me without interrupting. Can you do that? Yes. I received a packet of documents yesterday from your brother's attorney requesting my notarization. Standard estate transfer. Or so it appeared. She exhaled. I almost stamped it without a second look. But something felt off about the signature on page 7. The one attributed to your father. Dated 8 months before he passed. My throat tightened. What about it? It doesn't match. Not the pressure. Not the slant. Not the loop on the G in his last name. I have 11 years of your father's signatures in my files. Lily. I know how that man signed his name. A pause that felt like a verdict being delivered. Someone forged it. And the document it's attached to transfers the deed of the family property entirely to your brother. No mention of you anywhere. Not even $1. I sat down on the floor between 2 cardboard boxes. The family property. 3 acres in Vermont. The farmhouse where my father had lived for 30 years. The barn he'd restored with his own hands. The land he'd told both of us, explicitly, repeatedly, was to be split equally when he was gone. He'd said it at the kitchen table. He'd said it at Christmas. He'd had it written into a will that I had held in my own hands at the reading. Patricia. My voice came out quieter than I intended. The will. There's a second document in the packet. She said. A revised will. Dated 2 weeks before your father died. Leaving everything to Marcus. It contradicts the one read at the formal reading. Another pause. This one also has signatures I cannot verify. The room didn't spin. It sharpened. Like someone had turned a dial and brought everything into a focus so precise it almost hurt. I pressed my back against the wall and let it hold me up, because suddenly, the last 18 months made a different kind of sense. I had spent so long thinking I was the problem. The daughter who'd moved away. The one who hadn't visited enough in those final months because of a job she'd been too ambitious about and a life she'd been too selfish to put on hold. Every time I called home, Marcus was already there, taking care of things. He said, handling the details, managing Dad's medications, the property taxes, the contractor who came to look at the roof. He'd been so good about it, so patient, so visibly exhausted in a way that made me feel guilty every single time. You know Dad asks for you, he'd said once, in a tone so carefully calibrated, It landed exactly like blame without ever technically being blame. It would mean a lot if you could get up here more. Some of us can't just disappear into our careers. I had apologized. I had sent money for the roof. I had arranged 3 separate visits that he'd called me to postpone. Each time with a reasonable explanation, I had no reason to question. Now I understood why he'd needed me away. He needed time. Time to get close to a lawyer I didn't know. Time to find someone willing to put their name on a document that would hold up just long enough to clear probate before I noticed. Time to move money. Move paperwork. Move the story of what our father had actually wanted. And his wife? Claire. I thought about Claire. How she'd been so warm at the funeral. How she'd pressed my hand and said, "We'll get through this together." How she'd been the one to send me the lease listing for this apartment in this city 300 miles away. Attached to a message that said, "Fresh start might be good for you. Lily, you've been so stressed." She had helped me pack. I had thanked her. Lily. Patricia's voice came back. "Are you still with me?" "Yes." I stood up. Something had shifted in my chest. The shaking in my hands had stopped. "Patricia, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." "Of course." "If I go to that signing on Saturday and say nothing, if I walk in like I don't know any of this, how long before I lose the right to contest it?" Silence. "Patricia, once you sign, it's significantly harder. Your window to contest a fraud claim is better if you act before execution." She hesitated. "But Lily, I would strongly advise you not to. I'm not going to sign anything." I said, "But I'm also not going to warn him." I picked up my keys from the counter. "I need you to do something for me. I need certified copies of every document in that packet. I need your written assessment of the signature discrepancy. And I need the name of the best estate fraud attorney in Vermont. A beat. His name is Robert Calloway." She said, "And I'll have everything on your email within the hour." I hung up and stood in the middle of my half-unpacked apartment, the one his wife had found for me. In the city they'd both encouraged me to move to. And I felt the cold, clean clarity of a person who has just realized the cage they're standing in has been built around them, one polite suggestion at a time. I wasn't broken. I wasn't the absent daughter who'd failed her father. I had been managed. The drive to Vermont took 4 hours. I left before sunrise, before the city woke up, before I had time to talk myself into being reasonable about it. Robert Calloway met me at a coffee shop 2 towns over from the family property. He was in his 60s, quiet in the way that very competent people often are. And he read Patricia's assessment without any change in expression before setting it down on the table and folding his hands. "This is prosecutable," he said. "If the second will is fraudulent, we're looking at forgery, fraud on the court, and potentially elder financial abuse, depending on the timeline of when this was prepared relative to your father's cognitive state. He had a thanks in advance 8 months before he died." I said, "A small stroke. He recovered. But there was a period of about 6 weeks where I stopped. He was vulnerable. Calloway's expression didn't change. But something in his eyes did. That's the window. They used it. Almost certainly." He slid the documents back into the folder. "Now, you said you want to attend Saturday's signing. I want to end it there. In the room. I don't want to give them time to destroy anything, move anything, or build a better story." I looked at him. "Can we do that?" He was quiet for a moment. "It's theatrical." "Yes. And it requires you to walk into a room where 2 people have already demonstrated they will deceive you without hesitation." "I know." "What's the play?" I told him. He was quiet for a long moment after I finished. "Then I can have a Vermont State Police contact standing by. They won't enter unless I signal. But they'll be there." "Good. You're sure about this?" "Lily." I thought about my father's hands. The way he'd signed his name with that particular loop on the G. The way he'd sat across from me at the kitchen table and said that land stays in the family. "Both of you. Equal. I don't ever want you fighting over it." The way he'd meant it. "I'm sure." I said. I also made one other call before Saturday. The hardest one? My nephew, Danny, 14 years old. Marcus and Claire's son, who had texted me 3 times in the past month, for reasons I hadn't fully understood until now. Small things. Hey, Aunt Lily. Random question. Do you know where Grandpa kept his important papers? And do you know if Grandpa ever talked to you about the barn separately? And the one that had seemed strangest. Mom and Dad have been meeting with someone a lot. A guy I don't know. Is that normal? He picked up on the second ring. Aunt Lily. His voice dropped immediately, the way it did when he was trying not to be overheard. Are you coming Saturday? I said. Danny, I need to ask you something and I need you to keep it between us. Okay. No hesitation. Just that. I had always loved that about him. The meetings you mentioned, the man you didn't recognize. Do you know his name? A pause. I heard Mom call him Gerald. He's a lawyer. I think. He came 3 times. Always when I was supposed to be at practice. Another pause. I skipped once. I stayed in my room and listened through the vent. My chest clenched. What did you hear? I heard Dad say, she won't contest it. She's too far away and she doesn't care enough. And then Mom said, just make sure the notary doesn't look too hard. His voice was very steady for a 14-year-old. I didn't totally understand what it meant, but I figured it meant something bad. It did. I closed my eyes for a second. Danny, I need you to do something for me on Saturday. And I need you to know that no matter what happens in that room, I am going to make sure you are okay. Do you understand me? Yeah. His voice cracked slightly. What do you need me to do? I told him. He listened. When I finished, he said, That's all. I already have them. He said quietly. I took pictures of everything on Dad's desk 2 weeks ago. I didn't know why yet. I just thought I should. I sat with that for a moment. A 14-year-old boy who had taken photos of incriminating documents because something in him had known. The way kids sometimes know things, before the adults around them find the words for it. You're going to be okay. I told him. I promise. Are you? He asked. Yeah. I said. I am. Saturday arrived, the way important days always do. Looking exactly like any other morning from the outside. Gray November sky. Frost on the grass. The farmhouse sitting at the end of the gravel drive the way it always had. The red barn behind it. The old maple my father had planted when Marcus was born, still standing at the corner of the property. I had not been back since the funeral. I sat in my car at the end of the drive for a moment and let myself feel it. The grief that had never fully resolved. The specific ache of a house that used to mean something it didn't mean anymore. Then I got out of the car. Claire opened the front door before I reached the porch. She was dressed carefully. Cream blouse. Small earrings. The exact presentation of a woman who wants to appear warm and trustworthy. She pulled me into a hug that lasted a beat too long. Lily. She held me at arm's length and looked at my face with an expression of such practiced concern. I could have mistaken it for the real thing if I hadn't spent the last 4 days understanding exactly what it was. You look tired. Was the drive okay? I made coffee. Come in. I'm fine. I said. Thank you for having me. Of course. She squeezed my arms. This is going to be quick and painless. I promise. Just some paperwork, and then we can actually talk. It'll be good to have everything resolved. Resolved. That was the word she used. Marcus was inside, standing near the window with a mug in his hand. Dressed in the particular way he dressed, when he wanted to seem casual, but had thought carefully about it. He looked up when I walked in and his face did the thing. It always did, a warmth that arrived a half-second too late to be instinctive. Hey! He crossed the room and hugged me. Glad you made it. I know it's a haul. It's fine. I said. I wanted to be here. He either didn't catch the weight of that, or chose not to. In the sitting room, a man I didn't recognize was arranging papers on my father's writing desk. mid-50s. Careful hands. He looked up when I entered and introduced himself as Gerald Marsh. Attorney. He shook my hand with a grip that was simultaneously firm and somehow dismissive. Just a few documents today, he said, as though we were settling a parking ticket. Transfer of deed. Updated estate distribution. Standard co-signature items. Shouldn't take more than 20 minutes. I looked at the papers on the desk. I looked at the pen he'd laid out. Already uncapped. Can I review them first? I said. A flicker. Very small. Marcus's posture shifted almost imperceptibly. Of course. Marsh said. Take your time. I sat down and opened the first document. I turned pages slowly and deliberately, the way Robert Calloway had advised me to, giving nothing away, performing confusion and compliance in exactly the way they expected from me. Danny came down the stairs with 2 mugs of coffee. He set one near me on the desk without making eye contact. His hand, as he set it down, pressed a folded paper briefly against my wrist before releasing it. I pocketed it without looking at it. Here we are. Claire set a plate of pastries on the side table. Can I get anyone anything else? She was performing comfort. The warm home. The coffee. The food. The theater of a family gathering rather than the execution it actually was. I looked up at Marsh. I have a question about page 7. Marsh's expression remained professionally neutral. Of course. The signature attributed to my father. It's dated 14 months ago. I turned the page toward him. I'd like to understand the context. Was this executed at the house, at his request? Yes. Your brother arranged it. Your father was, he paused. Choosing carefully. He wanted to simplify the distribution while he still could. While he still could, I repeated. He was realistic about his health. Right? I set the document down. The thing is, Gerald, 14 months ago, my father had been recovering from his thanks in advance for about 6 weeks. His occupational therapist at that time was a woman named Dr. Renee Okwu in Burlington. She documented his cognitive state every week during that period. I looked at Marsh directly. She documented that he was not legally competent to execute binding documents for a period of approximately 9 weeks following the event. That window included the date on this page. The room went very still. Marcus set his coffee mug down. Lily Claire started, I'm not finished. I said it quietly. I was not angry. Anger would have been the wrong register. I was simply a woman who had done her homework, sitting across from people who had assumed she wouldn't. Patricia Hollins, your notary of record. The same woman who has notarized every document in this family for 11 years flagged the signature on this page 4 days ago. She has submitted a written affidavit to the Vermont Attorney General's office, stating that in her professional opinion, the signature does not match the authenticated samples in her file. Marsh stood up. I wouldn't. I said, there's a Vermont State Police investigator in a car at the end of this driveway. She's been there since 8 this morning. The color left Marcus's face in a way I had never seen before. Furthermore, I opened my bag and set a folder on the desk beside Marsh's documents. My attorney, Robert Calloway, has filed a motion to freeze all estate assets pending fraud investigation. That motion was granted Thursday at 4 p.m. I looked at my brother. You can't sell the property, transfer the deed, or execute any document relating to Dad's estate until this is resolved. You don't understand what you're doing, Marcus said. His voice had changed. The warmth was completely gone. What was underneath it was something I hadn't seen in him before. Or maybe hadn't let myself see. This family. I stood up. Dad told us both at this kitchen table that the land was ours equally. He said it more than once. He meant it. And you spent the last year of his life making sure I wasn't here so you could change it. I stopped. Breathed. I know you told someone I wouldn't contest it because I was too far away and didn't care enough. Claire went white. Danny heard that through the vent. I said, He's 14. He's been carrying that for 2 weeks. Marcus turned and looked at his son, who had come to stand in the doorway to the kitchen. Danny looked back at him without flinching. There was something in the boy's face that was too old for his age and too calm for the circumstances. The particular stillness of someone who has already made their peace with a hard thing. The photos Danny took of the documents on your desk 2 weeks ago, I continued, are already in Robert Calloway's possession. They show a draft of the revised will, with edits in handwriting, that is not my father's. Gerald Marsh picked up his briefcase. Sit down, I said. Please. The investigator outside has your name and description. He sat down. I looked at my brother across our father's writing desk. In our father's sitting room, with the frost still on the grass outside and the old maple casting its shadow over the corner of the property that was supposed to be mine as much as his. I'm not doing this to punish you, I said. And I meant it. I'm doing this because he asked us to be fair to each other. And you decided you were the only one who got to decide what fair meant. Marcus didn't say anything. He looked at the window. Outside, a car had come up the drive, Robert Calloway's. And behind it, the investigators. Claire sat down on the couch very slowly, like her knees had simply decided they were done. The next 2 hours were the kind of hours you don't fully process until much later. Questions and documents and voices that were professionally detached in the way of people doing a job they've done before. Gerald Marsh's license would be referred to the Bar Association. Claire retained her own attorney by phone within 30 minutes, which told me everything I needed to know about what their marriage had been built on. Marcus sat in a chair in the corner and didn't speak. When the investigators finally finished with the room, I walked to the kitchen and found Danny standing at the counter eating a granola bar with the focused energy of someone who had held themselves together for a very long time and was now simply running on the other side of it. Hey, I said. Hey. He looked up. Is it done? The hard part is. I sat on the counter stool across from him. Are you okay? He thought about it genuinely. The way kids do when they haven't yet learned to answer that question automatically. I think so. I knew something was wrong for a long time. It's almost easier now that it's just real. I understood that exactly like Sinned. You can come stay with me, I said. While things are being sorted out, if you want to. I have boxes I haven't unpacked yet, and a very uncomfortable air mattress, and absolutely nothing in my refrigerator. He almost smiled. That sounds terrible. It is terrible. But it's mine. I paused. It can be worse. For a while. If you need it. He looked at the granola bar. Then at me. Yeah. Okay. He came to stay the following weekend. He brought 3 boxes and a backpack, and the very specific quiet of someone learning how to take up space in a place where they aren't managing anyone else's feelings. The estate case took 7 months. It was not clean or simple or satisfying in the way that resolutions look on paper. Marcus's attorney argued capacity and undue influence from multiple directions. Patricia's affidavit held. Dr. Okwu's records held. Danny's photographs, recovered from his phone and authenticated, provided the connective tissue that tied the draft document to a revision process that couldn't have happened with my father's knowledge or consent. The revised will was invalidated. The original was reinstated. The property came to both of us. Equally. The way our father had always said it would. I didn't sell my half. I didn't know yet what to do with it. But I drove up there one afternoon in early spring, parked at the end of the driveway, and walked out to the old maple at the corner of the land. The frost was gone. The grass was coming back. The barn my father had restored with his own hands was still standing exactly where he'd left it. I put my hand on the bark of that tree and stood there for a while. There's a particular grief that comes not just from losing someone, but from discovering afterward that the people you trusted with their memory were willing to sell it. That kind of grief doesn't have a clean shape. You can't schedule it. It shows up when it wants to. In ordinary moments. When you're making coffee or driving or standing in a field in early spring with your hand on a tree your father planted, what I've learned is that you don't have to resolve it to survive it. You just have to stay in the room. Danny is doing well. He transferred schools and made a friend almost immediately, which I choose to take as evidence that he has a gift I don't fully understand for finding people worth knowing. He still texts me random questions about history, about cooking, about whether I think it's weird that he wants to study architecture, and I answer every single one. The apartment that Claire found for me turned out to be exactly the right apartment, which is maybe the most ironic part of the whole story. 300 miles away. My name on the door. Nobody else has a key. The day the court issued its final ruling, I was sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee and the unopened mail I'd been avoiding. And I thought about my father signing his name at that same table. The particular loop on the G. The pressure and the slant. He knew who we were. He wrote it down. He trusted that it would hold. It held. If there is anyone watching this who has ever had someone quietly, systematically move them out of the picture, out of a family, out of a conversation, out of a room where their name should have been, I want you to know something. Being moved doesn't mean you don't belong there. Sometimes the people doing the moving are counting on you to believe it does. They are counting on your absence being the thing that makes their story make sense. Don't let your absence be the ending. Go back to the room. Bring your receipts. And know the difference between a family that is broken and a family that is breaking you. Those are two different things. And only one of them is worth trying to save.